You have queued up the Roulette Tapes, a program of adventurous music and conversation recorded at the New York City Concert Hall, Roulette. You can hear thousands of concert recordings from Roulette's past and present and find news of upcoming events celebrating innovation and imagination at roulette.org. Aren't you curious?
In this edition of the Roulette Tapes, the trombonist Jim Staley traces a path from Army brat to orchestral musician and, through encounters with influential mentors and techniques, musical awakenings that led to a career as a master of free improvisation and director of the Roulette concert series. Performers heard in this segment, recorded between 1986 and 2015, include John Zorn, Ikue Mori, Zeena Parkins, Bill Frisell, Fred Frith, Chris Cochrane, Joey Barron, Kyoko Kitamura, Cyro Baptista, and Derek Bailey. And now the projects of Jim Staley.
My name is Jim Staley. I play the trombone. I was born in El Paso, Texas. My father was still active in the military after World War II. I was there. I don't remember any of Texas. I just remember, I don't know, maybe I was 1.5 or 2 when we flew over to Germany. And I remember Germany in Wiesbaden, where my brother was born. And another 1.5 years or so, he was released from active duty. We took a cruise back to the United States and landed in New York City. Picked up a car and then drove out to the Midwest where my grandparents were on the farm in central Illinois. And I grew up in Champaign-Urbana. I'd started school already. I'd been there 1.5 years when the lottery came down, and I had such a low number that I felt I was inevitably going to get drafted, so I chose to enlist for a band and then spend 3 years playing my horn and come back to school with some experience and better positioned to take advantage of it. San Francisco was beautiful, and I loved it. It was a time of, Haight-Ashbury and, 1970, 71, and it was really beautiful. But, and I studied with some good people while I was there, but it wasn't that significant in terms of influences. When I went to Berlin, the military side of it was less enjoyable, but some of the guys in the band were very into jazz, and they took me down to the jazz gallery and we hung out, and they introduced me to Slide Hampton, and he was just really a beautiful person. But we talked a lot about music and stuff, and I knew how he felt about things. He was not a fan of free music, but I just appreciated what I did learn from him, what I did hear from him about music and jazz and improvising. And so I was introduced to a lot of the expatriate jazz artist there at the time. About a year and a half into my stay there, a guy named Terry Thompson, who had been in the Navy band in Washington, studied at Indiana, came to town trying to get into an orchestra. And so he was studying at the Hochschuler. So we got together and played duets. And he had such a big impact on my advancement of playing. It was significant, in the orchestral style, of course, which is what he was working on. We played duets a lot, and it was really took my playing to another level working with him. His friends from the Hochschuler, Daniel, used to grab me and took me to concerts at the Hochschuler, the FMP, beginning of FMP things, where there'd be like 20 or 30 guys lined up against the wall, on both edges, in a gymnasium, just blowing their brains out for a good, hour and a half straight or something. And they take a break and come back and do it again. And so that was an interesting experience. But that was just a sort of beginning. There were great people involved. I can't remember all. I'm sure Brotzman was in that group. And after that, he took me to see Barry Guy and Paul Rutherford play at some small theater. So that was really interesting, and Paul being a trombone player. And so I spent some time talking with Paul, and that was very impactful. I picked up a few tips from him about the larger mouthpiece, allowing for more timbral control and interest. The smaller mouthpiece helps you play high and sharper, but the larger mouthpiece helps you have a lot more sound capability, range. At some point, James Fulkerson came to town. He was looking, and so he was referred to me, and I guess he'd heard about me because we'd both been at Illinois. So he called me up. He wanted to have somebody to play duets with, so I got together with him and stuff. But then I got interested in the kind of composition stuff. He was there on a DAAD fellowship. It was interesting, particularly because of the extended techniques and the stuff he was doing with, bassoon mouthpiece or other things, or the singing and playing and the overtones, and incorporating that into compositions. So that was Berlin. So then went back to school, took all that together, and felt like trying out things. I went up to Beverly Blossom and said, I'd like to play for your class. And she said, well, you want to play for the tech class or the composition class? I said, how about the composition class? So I came in with my bass trombone and basically took on the instructions for ideas that she gave the dancers and tried to realize them in sound. So that was fun. She was incredible. I never felt I was any good at playing changes, so I got much more interested in working with sound ideas and improvising more freely with the use of sound. And of course pitch comes into it. What I hear is fine, and pitch and rhythm and all the aspects of what you can work with. And then we had a group together that just, in the basement of Smith, used to kick a box around it, down the hall and around the place, and, try out all the stupid ideas that anybody had ever tried in their life. Illinois had so many great people in one concentrated area that I could work with, and dancers and composers and great musicians, and it was just a wealth of. However, it was in a university, and it was very transit, And so I was thinking, where do I want to go after I finish? So I went back out to California to explore that in, I think it was 1977. Along the way, I met up with Stuart Dempster. He was at a snow resort. I think it was called Snowbird or something like that outside of Salt Lake City. And he was from the West Coast. He was from San Francisco, and he was teaching in Seattle. And he said, well, there's so many great artists down and musicians, but there's no financial support, so nothing really ever gets off the ground. And when I got there, it was just sort of the beginning of Langton Arts, and they were sort of a scuffling beginning organization, the closest thing to the kitchen at the time out there. And it was that. Everybody was spread out all over the Bay Area, and it was, it wasn't a kind of thing where you just run into somebody and hang out in a cafe. Then I went down to L.A., where I stayed with a guy I'd met when I was in Berlin, and he was the principal trombone player in the San Francisco Symphony. I had met him on the top of a bus. This was when I was out of school, or out of the Army, and I was, getting a little ragged and funky looking, and all these guys on the top of the bus, and I said, man, these are Americans, but they're not tourists. And then I asked around, and it turned out they were the orchestra. And I said, oh, and because I knew the bassoonist. They said, oh, here's Miles Anderson. He's our, trombone player. So I started talking to Miles, and he was incredibly friendly. And he said, well, we're on the way to a rehearsal. Why don't you come? So he dragged me down to the rehearsal, and I said, that's great. I hung out and watched them rehearse with Ozawa and the orchestra. And then he said, well, we're going to go out and grab a bite. Come on, hang out. So he was just getting into playing, the barrio and new music, and he was putting out a record of working with composers and very interested in the new things. So we really hit it off and had a great time. And so then after that, he said, well, just come. We'll get you in for the concert. So I sat right behind the trombone section, looking at Ozawa conducting, playing the miraculous Mandarin, the Bartok, and which has an incredible trombone part, and it was just magical, really. Ozawa's conducting, he was just incredible. So after that, he said, well, come on, we're going to a party. So he drags me to a party, and it's the American ambassador's house, and I'm still in my turned out, inside out sweatshirt, and hadn't shaved in a few days, and hair growing all over the place. So everybody's in tux except the orchestra, and then I walk through. So, well, I guess it's New York. That was the center for what was going on. That's where the kitchen was. That's where Cage was. That's where, all the jazz stuff that I was really interested in was. I was mostly following along the lines of the minimalist stuff and the, gradual tone changes and really minimalist focused kind of work. But when probably December, it was in the fall, October maybe of 81, I had Zorn here, and he asked me to play in his game piece Track and Field. It's where I sat next to Butch Morris, and Wayne Horvitz and all these people were there, and that's where I really got excited about that idea, those ideas of everything really changing fast and just going with what's going on in your brain at the time, and no one person having complete control over the whole thing, but occasionally having control for 20 seconds at most, of what's going on. So I started getting much more involved in thinking that way and playing that way, and it seemed to work well for me. When I first asked him to play with me in December, I think it was my concert here, I'd heard him play, and I already knew what kinds of sounds I could work with on the trombone that would really connect up with what he was doing. And I just got more involved with all the, with Wayne and Elliot and Shelley and Sam Bennett and Ikue and Bill Frisell and of course with Zorn and Frith. And the thing I was exploring, I guess, was what I liked so much about that kind of work was you had no idea that you were making connection with somebody, or that you were so locked in when you played at the same moment, particular pitch or thing, until you went back and listened to it and realized that you were hearing each other on a level that you weren't necessarily conscious of. I was working on a trio with Ikue Mori and Bill Frisell. And at some, it was going great and everything. At some point I said, well, so Bill, what is it you find you're thinking about when, are you thinking about this or that? And he said, well, actually, I don't think I'm thinking.
That was a good Bill Frisell impersonation.
And when I talked to Zorn about it, he said, yeah, he said he's not thinking, right? That record came about because it was influenced by Zorn's Locus Solus. They were the hand signals where the three people could like signal each other and play, the games that John likes to do with improvising. I just want to get rid of all that stuff and just improvise, see what people choose to do on their own with what they hear. And I started thinking about this after we were at MERS playing the Cobra. And we did these workshops. And so everybody just played, and there was a group of people, and I got ideas. I played with Elliot and Guy and Wayne and somebody else, and I started thinking about the different people, and I got together Wayne Horvitz and Elliot Sharp, and then I thought of Shelley and Sam Bennett, and that was a very different kind of thing, very striking, very quick, short pieces, but really tight. And Bill and Ikue were a really different kind of thing that was just expansive, and you're on LSD suddenly or something. You're just okay. What's this world? It's like Don Juan's trip to wherever. The thing about Bill and Ikue and Shelley and Sam, they were just so opposites. Shelley and Sam was like a vaudeville act where you were constantly trying to pull somebody out of the front and jump in front of them and that kind of thing. And, you're always jumping for attention. And with Bill and Ikue, it was sort of like, I just felt I had to be careful not to step on anything. Then I wanted to end it all with Zorn and Frith. Up until that point, every gig I played with John or Fred, they'd been on game calls and tabletop. That Monday, John showed up with his sax and Fred showed up with his guitar. No game calls, no tabletop. Totally different kind of thing. And so you go with it. I wanted to do a record. I was thinking about doing something that had strong rock influences. And it ended up being Jim Staley's Don Giovanni, which I got some flack for. But you gave me the title, so it was too good I couldn't not use it. You know, later on, when I toured, I added Chris. But before, when I did the record, I had Davy Williams. Because I wanted somebody that I could jump into more of the blues stuff with. And Chris is more of a rock noise guy. And I didn't want it to all be rock noise. And so I had brought in Davy and sort of throw a wrench in the works kind of thing. He's sort of a surrealist. He's such a character. Then I decided to work with, to bring in Chris. And that was such a natural fit with Ikue and Zeena, Chris Cochrane. And then I could play with that too, that harsh, metallic sound. I knew I had to use an RE20 for those, no soft trombone playing going on in there. The thing about touring with them, which was great, because just about every other group I toured with, we found that after 3 After 3 gigs, we started finding ourselves trying to keep from repeating ourselves and hearing the same, getting into the same ideas with each other and stuff. I never had that with that group. I never felt like anything we had anything resembled the gig we did the night before, really, that everything was really different. It was fresh. It always felt fresh. Well, Roulette's been a vehicle for me in a lot of ways, in that I could do my own work, but also bring in and support artists who I can learn from, who are doing incredible, interesting things and advancing stuff, and I didn't have to leave my own living room. I could, in my own studio, I could just be here. I was hearing so much, and taking it in and learning from it. At the same time, I was pursuing my own work. And that's sort of the idea of it. It's sort of at the time we got to take it to Brooklyn, I knew it had to go on beyond me with that space and the situation that what we'd put together, built, made sense that it would grow and continue. And once we got it settled, that other people would take it over and run it, and just for the health of it and the scene. But fortunately, I'm able to think more about what my work is now and whether I'm starting over or starting from where I left it off. So.
Musical projects and commentary from trombonist Jim Staley. The musical excerpts have been preserved as part of Roulette's Concert Archive project. The full recordings can be heard by searching roulette.org/archive. This program is made possible in part with support from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Grammy Museum. This is David Weinstein at the desk. Thanks to Jim and to everyone listening.
You have been listening to the Roulette Tapes, a program of adventurous music and conversation. This series is produced by Roulette Intermedium. You can find thousands of concert recordings from Roulette's archives and news of upcoming events at roulette.org.